And this is very simple, is what they are. One, he says, remove anger. I have a poem for each one, but I haven't got time to go into all of them. What is anger? Anger is an absence of peace. Anger is you saying to the world, what I see shouldn't be the way it is. If it is only the way I want it to be, then I wouldn't have to be unhappy right now. And you think, a lot of people think, I can't get motivated, we can't change things without anger. The best way to change anything, said Rumi, is through love. So removing all thoughts of anger towards anything or anyone, because they are lower, and lower energies. Second, forgiveness. Whoever it is that wronged you. I had somebody just remind me the other day that somebody borrowed $1,500 from me about 8 or 9 years ago. And they said, aren't you mad at that woman? She still hasn't paid you back that money that she said that she would pay back. And it's been, I don't know, a dozen years or more. And I said, I distinctly remember forgetting that. It's forgiving and forgetting and letting it go. That anything or anyone who has wronged you in any way, send them love in your consciousness. And I'm talking about the hardest things of all. Be a person who only sends love. Be a person who is the orange, that no matter what is said to you, no matter how you're squeezed, the only thing that comes out is divine love, the love that is given to us by our source. Here's the third one from Rumi. Surprised me. He said, refrain from speaking ill of anyone ever. This has been the hardest one for me, because it's just so easy to talk shit about people, isn't it? And they just give you so much stuff to talk about, you know. The way he did that, and she did that, and this one did that, and all of that. And to stop yourself. Now when I have people around me, and I have some people around me who have a habit of doing this, always talking negative about somebody, saying something about, I find myself saying, reminding myself, yeah, but she's really a nice person, or that, and now I'm telling them, I am working myself on not engaging in conversations which are put downs of anyone else. Be that person if you want to understand what it's like to be a being of light. And you know, it gets easier and easier to do. I find myself slipping. I slipped back into it a couple of days ago when someone was saying something about someone, that we all knew, and then I stopped myself and I said, I'm really working on not saying these kinds of things about anyone. Who am I? Who am I to judge anybody else? No judgment, no criticism, no condemnation towards any of God's children. That's how we are implored to behave if you want to be a being of light. The fourth is compassion. The Dalai Lama said, if we could take every child on earth at the age of 5 and have them meditate for 1 hour a week on compassion, we could eliminate all violence on our planet in 1 generation. From the Dalai Lama. That's every child at 5. 1 hour a week meditating on compassion towards others. In a generation, it's gone. It was by becoming a more compassionate person and being less flippant in my responses when I was on the radio and on television and so on. And finding a place of kindness and an opportunity to just put my arm around someone and share just a moment of love. I found that I became a healer in that process. The fifth of the 7 steps for becoming a fully human person that you'll find yourself noticing, you live from a place of humility. In the Tao, the whole Tao is filled with all of the importance of being humble, of not telling people how great you are. There's 27 verses in the Tao that refer to water. That water is the strongest substance on earth. If you take the hardest substance there is and let water run over it, eventually it'll wear away whatever it might be, the hardest substance there is, whether it's granite or whatever. Eventually, the softness of water will triumph. And water always stays low. It goes to the lowest point. And it always knows that all of the rivers and all of the raging things above it will ultimately come to it. I find even how easy it is now to avoid arguments of any kind, because you play it out in advance before it even comes. If I say this, she said that, and then she's going to say that, and I'm going to say that. You can do all of this in 3 seconds. Shoop, shoop, shoop. And you just say, I think you're right, honey, thanks. Thanks for pointing it out. And you just let it all go. You know, it's practicing humility. The 6th is contentment, which I already talked about, state of gratitude, contentment. And 7 is generosity. And it's the weirdest part of it is that the more I give away, the more that just seems to keep coming back.
There is a stillness in you that cannot be disturbed, a place untouched by fear, unshaken by chaos, and immune to the noise of the world. It has no name, yet it knows everything. It has no shape, yet it holds the shape of your peace. It is not your mind, for your mind is loud. It is not your emotions, for your emotions are waves. It is not your body, for the body withers and bends to time. It is the part of you that watches quietly, lovingly, unmoved. And in that watching, there is power. We spend most of our lives reacting to what was said, to what wasn't said, to the look someone gave, to the news flashing across our screens, to the stories we carry like old, worn clothes, too heavy to wear, but too familiar to take off. We live at the mercy of our interpretations, our wounds, our replays of the past, and projections of the future. We live, but we do not watch. We act, but we do not see. To watch is not to detach from life, it is to arrive fully in it. It is to stop being dragged by the stream of every emotion and every judgment. It is to sit at the edge of the river and say, there it is again, the fear, the anger, the memory, the story, and then let it flow. The ego is a brilliant but frantic storyteller. It cannot live in the present moment because the present moment exposes its illusions. It thrives on reaction because it feeds on control. The ego needs your agreement. It needs your reactivity to survive. But your soul does not need to prove itself. It simply is. It observes without trying to fix. It accepts without needing to justify. It loves without asking to be loved back. Being the watcher is not an escape, it is the return. When you become the watcher, you are no longer the puppet of your past. You are no longer the hostage of your triggers. You begin to see that the anger is not you, it is an energy that passes through. The grief is not you, it is a wave that visits, not a house you must live in. The fear is not you, it is a voice, not your truth. There is a sacred gap between stimulus and response. And in that gap is where you reclaim your life. That gap is where the watcher lives. You are not your reactions. You are the awareness beneath them. You are not your thoughts. You are the spaciousness that notices them arise and fall. You are not the chaos. You are the calm watching the chaos. And when you remember this, you become free. Freedom doesn't come when the world is silent. It comes when you can hear the noise and choose not to be it. It comes when you can feel the heat of anger and not throw it. When you can taste the sting of offense and not become offended. When you can sit in the storm of opinion and not get swept away by any of it. There is no greater strength than presence. To be present is to live beyond reaction. It is to let go of the idea that everything demands your emotional involvement. It is to allow people to be who they are without needing to correct them. It is to hear a criticism and not make it your identity. It is to receive praise and not build your worth upon it. Presence is not passive. It is alert, grounded, alive. The watcher is not distant. The watcher is compassionate. It sees clearly because it does not cling. It understands deeply because it listens without defense. It acts with power because it does not act from fear. You see, when you become the watcher, life softens. Not because life changes, but because you do. The same situations arise, but they no longer own you. The same people trigger the same old patterns, but now you recognize them as patterns, not as truth. You stop bleeding into every moment. You stop needing everything to validate your sense of self. You return to your inner sanctuary, the place where your soul sits with open hands and a quiet smile, knowing that all things are passing clouds. You cannot stop the world from shouting, but you can stop yourself from echoing it. Buddha once said, "You will not be punished for your anger, you will be punished by your anger." And how often we let our own reactivity become the very suffering we try to avoid. We mistake reaction for power, but reaction is bondage. Reaction is the ego's way of staying alive. True power is in the pause. True power is in the breath that says, "I see you, emotion, but I do not belong to you." The watcher doesn't suppress, it doesn't deny, it simply sees, and in seeing, it liberates. Watch yourself when you're offended. Who is it that feels so injured? Is it your soul, or is it an identity you've built, now threatened by someone else's opinion? Watch your defensiveness. Who is it defending? The truth needs no defense. The ego, however, is always on guard. Watch your craving for validation. Who is it that wants to be seen? The infinite spirit within you is already seen. It is seen by the entire universe. There is nothing you need to prove. Nothing you need to fix to be enough. Nothing you need to hold on to be safe. The watcher knows this. The reactor forgets. Let your breath be your teacher. When it quickens, when it shortens, when it tightens, that is the moment to return. That is the moment to step out of the role and back into the witness. Each inhale is a choice. Each exhale is a letting go. The more you breathe consciously, the more you become aware. And awareness is the birthplace of all transformation. When you are the watcher, you stop needing life to behave the way you want it to. You stop arguing with reality. You stop insisting that people be different to make you happy. You stop controlling what was never yours to control. And in this surrender, you find peace not as an achievement, but as your original nature. Peace is not something you chase. Peace is what remains when you stop reacting. So many of us live on the edge of offense. We're ready to be hurt, ready to be insulted, ready to be outraged. We've trained ourselves to scan for threat, not physical threat, but psychological threat. Someone disagrees with us and we feel erased. Someone rejects us and we feel unworthy. But what if none of it was personal? What if every offense is an invitation to awaken? You are not what others say to you. You are what you choose to hear. Let people misunderstand you. Let them mislabel you. Let them walk away if they must. The watcher does not flinch. The watcher knows that the truth doesn't need to chase anything. The truth just is. And if someone cannot see you, that does not make you invisible. If someone rejects you, that does not make you invalid. You are not here to be understood. You are here to understand. The moment you stop needing to react, you begin to live. You begin to notice the small joys, the way the sunlight touches the leaves, the pause between two heartbeats, the sacred silence after a deep breath. These are the spaces where the divine speaks, but you must be still enough to hear. And stillness does not mean inactivity. Stillness is presence. It is clarity. It is the quiet power of a soul unbothered by the noise. You have nothing to defend, no argument to win, no ego to preserve. You have only the opportunity in every moment to return to the watcher within. So next time you feel the rise of reaction, pause, breathe, watch. You are not the storm. You are the sky. The sky does not tremble when clouds pass through it. It does not cling to the rain or resist the lightning. It allows, it witnesses, it remains, and so must you. Your true self, the eternal witness, has never been broken, never been threatened, never been less than whole. It is only the ego that flinches, that crumbles, that begs for validation in the eyes of others. The soul simply watches and waits, knowing the truth is never in the noise. Every time you choose to observe rather than react, you are retraining your consciousness. You are shifting the gravity of your identity from the external to the internal, from fear to love, from protection to presence. You become like the ocean, watching its own waves rise and fall, but never mistaking the waves for its essence. The turbulence no longer defines you. The stillness beneath becomes your home. There is a moment, brief but sacred, when awareness interrupts a habit. That moment is a portal to liberation. A chance to say, I see it, I've been here before, but this time I choose differently. And in that subtle shift, your entire life begins to change. Not because the world softens, but because you no longer harden in its presence. You stop armoring up every time someone looks at you the wrong way. You stop bracing for judgment. You begin to live unclenched, wide open, deeply rooted, and profoundly present. And isn't that what true power is? To be unshakable, not because you dominate, but because you no longer need to defend. To be calm in the midst of fire. To be kind without condition. To be aware of the storm and yet centered in your stillness. This is the life of the awakened. Not free of conflict, but free of entanglement. Not void of feeling, but void of control by those feelings. When you stop reacting, you begin seeing. You see the other person not as an enemy, but as a mirror. You see your anger not as a truth, but as a message. You see your triggers as teachers. You see life not as a series of attacks, but as a series of invitations to evolve. You begin to understand that everything that once made you flinch is here to make you free. The reactive self is a prisoner of the past. It is stitched together by old wounds, unconscious stories, and inherited beliefs. It's constantly trying to protect something, a fragile image, a constructed identity, a false sense of self. But the watcher knows there is nothing to protect because the soul is not a character. The soul cannot be injured by opinion, it cannot be destroyed by loss, it cannot be undone by time. You are not your conditioning, you are not your defense mechanisms, you are not the fight or flight impulse that flares up when things don't go your way. You are the one who sees it all. And in seeing it all, you are no longer owned by any of it. Have you ever felt the weight of a reaction coming, the anger bubbling, the heart racing, the story forming, and then you paused, you breathed, you watched, and just like that, the charge softened. That is presence. That is awakening. That is what it means to remember yourself in the heat of forgetting. It's not about never feeling triggered. It's about no longer being tricked into believing those triggers define you. It's not about being a stone cold and unfeeling. It's about being a mountain still and grounded, even as the winds howl around you. You see, the more you watch without reacting, the more you begin to trust life again. You realize that not every comment needs a comeback. Not every situation demands your opinion. Not every disagreement is a battlefield. You stop entering every interaction with armor. You stop needing the last word. You begin to understand that silence can be the loudest answer. That stillness can be the most powerful presence. And in that space, that holy space between what happened and how you choose to respond, a miracle occurs. The miracle of self-possession, of divine clarity, of peace that cannot be disturbed by anything outside of you. You no longer live from habit, you live from intention. You begin to meet life with eyes open, heart soft, and soul steady. The reactive mind is always chasing approval, chasing control, chasing an identity it can hold on to. But the watcher knows there is nothing to chase when you already are. You are not here to be everything to everyone. You are here to be fully awake in yourself. To be so deeply rooted in your presence that even if the world misreads you, misunderstands you, misjudges you, you stay true. Truth needs no audience. Presence needs no applause. The divine in you needs no permission. And so I invite you, not tomorrow, not someday, but in this very moment, to pause. Let the breath remind you of the eternal now. Let the silence return you to the sacred watcher. Let the witness within you rise. And from that space, observe. Observe your thoughts without clinging. Observe your emotions without dramatizing. Observe your life without rushing to fix, correct, or judge. This is not the end of your spiritual path. This is the beginning. Because when you become the watcher, everything changes. Not by force, but by frequency. You stop vibrating at the level of the problem and begin rising into the solution. You stop looking for healing in others and start embodying it within yourself. You stop playing the role of the victim or the hero and simply become real. And in your realness, your grounded, divine, conscious presence, you begin to heal not just yourself, but everyone you touch. Not through preaching, not through trying, but simply through being. Being the space, being the peace, being the clarity in a world addicted to confusion. You are not here to be tossed around by life. You are here to be the still point, the silent flame, the breath between the chaos. And you'll know when you found this place, not because life gets easier, but because you stop collapsing in front of it. Your center becomes unshakable. Your peace becomes non-negotiable. Your love becomes unconditional. And from this space, my friend, everything becomes possible. And from this space, my friend, everything becomes possible. When you no longer live at the mercy of your reactions, you step into the rarest kind of power, the power of inner authority. Not dominance, not superiority, but sovereignty of the soul. You're no longer pulled by every emotional wind, no longer yanked into battles that aren't yours. You become a space of presence that others can feel but cannot disturb. You begin to hear the world, not just through your ears, but through your spirit. Someone may yell, and you hear their pain. Someone may judge, and you hear their fear. Someone may try to provoke, and you sense their longing for love. The watcher sees this, not to become better than anyone, but to remember none of it is about you. And what a relief that is. What a deep, cleansing sigh for the soul to know you are not responsible for the storms in other people's skies. You are only responsible for whether you bring your umbrella or your sunshine, whether you enter their storm or remain the calm that invites them into clarity. To live as the watcher is not to become indifferent, it's to become deeply compassionate without losing yourself. Compassion doesn't require you to abandon your peace. In fact, real compassion flows from peace. When you react, you join others in their suffering. But when you watch, you become the mirror that reflects something higher. You say without words, you don't have to live like that. There's another way. And when you live this way, something extraordinary happens. You begin to radiate peace. Not the kind that looks peaceful on the outside, but simmers with resentment underneath. Not the kind that avoids conflict by shrinking. No, this is the peace that walks into any room and changes its atmosphere. The peace that speaks without words. The peace that silences chaos just by being. Because when you are no longer at war with yourself, the world cannot drag you into battle. You stop arguing with reality. You stop trying to edit the universe to match your preferences. You stop needing the moment to be anything other than what it is. And in that surrender, you don't become passive, you become present. You take action, not from desperation, but from alignment. You speak, not to defend, but to express love. You listen, not to prepare your reply, but to understand with your whole being. This is how the soul moves. Gently, powerfully, without rush, and oh, how the world needs more of this. More beings who don't crumble at conflict, who don't lose themselves trying to win approval, who aren't addicted to proving they're right. The world is loud with reactions. Be the one who is quiet with understanding. Be the one who slows down when others speed up. Be the one who chooses grace when the ego demands retaliation. There is a river inside you that has never stopped flowing. Even when you were tangled in your thoughts, even when you believed the voice of fear, even when you reacted with anger, shame, or pride. That river was always there, steady, ancient, divine. It is your true nature. The watcher lives there. The soul drinks from it. And your freedom begins the moment you return to its banks. So when you feel yourself being pulled into the story, the fight, the trigger, the need to explain, the craving to be seen, pause. Let the breath return you. Let your awareness remind you. Let the watcher reclaim the moment, because life isn't about avoiding the waves, it's about learning to surf them with awareness. It's about realizing that no matter what chaos dances across the surface, the depths of who you are remain unmoved. That is your home. That is your truth. That is the part of you that has never been hurt, never been lost, never been less than divine. And when you live from that place, when your identity is rooted not in ego but in soul, then your presence becomes medicine. You don't have to fix everyone. You don't have to save the world. You don't even have to change anyone's mind. Just be what you are when you're not reacting. Light, calm, truth, stillness. That is enough. More than enough. That is the invitation you offer the world. Come sit with me in this silence and remember who you are. And if they do, beautiful. And if they don't, you continue walking, not in pride, not in bitterness, but in peace. Because the watcher walks with grace. And grace, my friend, is the only power that doesn't need to shout. The watcher walks with grace, not because it is immune to pain, but because it no longer mistakes pain for identity. It has learned the sacred art of presence, not as a performance, but as a remembrance. To watch is to love without possession, to listen without preparing to speak, to live without the weight of needing everything to be different in order to be okay. And when you live like this, when you truly become the watcher, the need to be understood falls away. You no longer plead with the world to see you, to validate you, to applaud your efforts. You know that to be seen by the divine within you is more than enough. You feel the presence of the infinite, not as something to chase, but as something that never left. Something that was always whispering beneath your reaction. You are not this storm. You are the sky. It passes through. And in this realization, you soften. You stop bracing for impact. You stop rehearsing pain. You stop living from the haunted echoes of what if and what was. You rest not in exhaustion, but in awakening. You stop trying to control what's never been yours, and instead surrender to the stillness that has always been home. You forgive yourself for every time you believe the lie that you were only as worthy as your performance, only as loved as your usefulness, only as safe as your defenses. You forgive yourself for the times you reacted, for the times you fell into fear, for the times you said what your soul never meant, not because it was right, but because you are ready to be free. Forgiveness, too, is an act of watching, of saying, yes, I see the wound, but I also see who I truly am beyond it. And then something quiet but life-altering begins to happen. You stop waiting for permission to be at peace. You stop postponing joy until circumstances align. You stop bargaining with life. If this happens, then I'll feel whole. No. Wholeness is now, peace is now, God is now. Everything you've been chasing while reacting was always sitting silently in the sanctuary of your awareness. The watcher knows that time is not the answer, presence is. You don't need another year to become what your soul already is. You don't need more proof, more agreement, more applause. You need only this breath, this stillness, this radical return to the center that has never abandoned you. And this is not a theory, this is an embodiment. When you embody the watcher, your life becomes less about performance and more about presence. You start speaking less and saying more. You start needing less and feeling fuller. You begin walking through the world with a softness that doesn't ask, do you accept me? But instead radiates, I accept myself. And because you accept yourself, others feel safe to do the same in your presence. Your being becomes a sanctuary, your silence becomes sacred. You no longer react to prove your worth, you respond from the overflow of your awareness. That's how the divine speaks. Not to convince, but to awaken. Not to correct, but to reflect. You begin to realize that every trigger was a teacher, and every interruption was an initiation. That the very moments which once made you spiral were not obstacles, they were sacred doorways. Doorways leading you deeper into the witness, deeper into grace, deeper into the stillness that does not flinch, does not fight, and does not fear. And now, you are ready. Not ready to achieve something, not ready to prove anything, but ready to finally live, not from the ego's urgency, but from the soul's timelessness. Ready to meet the day, not as a battle, but as a blessing. Ready to hold space instead of hold grudges. Ready to watch your thoughts pass like clouds and realize you are the sky. You always were. The world may still swirl, people may still project, but you now walk as the calm inside the center of it all. And when old reactions try to rise, because they will, you'll meet them with compassion, not condemnation. You'll greet them like old friends with fading power, saying gently, I see you, but I no longer serve you. And in that moment, you will smile, not because life is perfect, but because you have remembered who you are. You are not the fear. You are not the noise. You are not the ego's constant commentary. You are the one who watches all of it and chooses love anyway. So breathe, beloved soul. Breathe and return to this sacred moment, to this steady presence, to this watcher that does not need to win but only needs to witness. Let others shout. Let the world race. Let the noise unfold. You just keep watching. Just keep loving, because when you are the watcher, not the reactor, you do not just change your life. You remember that you are life. And life, in its truest form, does not react. It flows. It trusts. It shines. And so do you. There comes a moment in every life when the soul whispers softly at first that something isn't right, that despite the things you've gathered, the achievements you've counted, the steps you've followed, something remains untouched, unawakened, unfulfilled. Not because life has failed you, but because your thoughts have not yet remembered their power. You see, you are not merely a body moving through the world. You are a field of consciousness creating it. And the lens through which you look at the world, your thoughts, is not a passive reflection of life, but the very projector of its quality. What you think is not just commentary, it's alchemy. You don't see things as they are. You see things as you are through the stories you've chosen, through the meanings you've inherited, through the emotions you allow to linger like smoke in the chambers of your mind. Your outer world is always mirroring the dominant vibration of your inner world. And your thinking, moment by moment, is the tuning fork. The universe, being eternally impartial, says only this: as you believe, so shall it be done unto you. You are not what the world calls you. You are not your name, your title, your reputation, or your fears. You are the thinker behind the thoughts, the dreamer behind the mask, the awareness, watching it all unfold, and waiting, always waiting, for you to reclaim your authorship of this life. Most people never pause to wonder, who is doing the thinking in here? And where did these thoughts come from? They repeat patterns like a song stuck on repeat. Songs of lack, of worry, of comparison, of judgment, never realizing that they are dancing to music. They never chose that their mind has become a house built by strangers, and now they live inside it, calling it truth. But thought is not fixed. It is fluid. It can be questioned, it can be healed, it can be elevated, and when it is, life itself begins to take a new shape. The quality of your life is not determined by the conditions you're in, but by the conversations you're having with yourself about those conditions.
It's not the storm that breaks you. It's the belief that you cannot sail through it. Begin to listen, truly listen, to the voice that speaks just beneath the noise, the still, silent knowing that's always been with you. It doesn't shout, it doesn't panic, it doesn't echo the world's madness. It simply reminds you, you are not your thoughts. You are the one who chooses which thoughts get to stay. And that is the first liberation, to recognize that you are not a prisoner of your thinking. You are its master. But mastery begins with awareness. Every moment you catch yourself thinking a thought that limits you, a thought that shrinks your spirit or dim your light, is a holy moment, a spiritual opportunity. Not to shame yourself, but to remember yourself. To remember that no one installed that thought without your permission, and that now, in this breath, you can choose again. The quality of your life is not waiting at the end of some distant achievement. It is shaped, molded in the unseen furnace of your inner dialogue. Do you feed the flame of resentment? Do you pour gasoline on thoughts of fear, of not being enough, of being left behind? Do you carry the past into today like a sack of stones, repeating, "This is just how I am," as if your identity were carved in stone rather than breathed into being? Or do you wake up each morning and choose a new vibration? Do you speak to yourself with love before the world gets a chance to interfere? Do you plant thoughts of peace, joy, forgiveness, and water them with presence until they bloom into a life that reflects your soul? Most people treat thoughts like facts, but thoughts are just clouds passing through the vast sky of your awareness. You are not the cloud, you are the sky. And in that realization, you are free. Let me ask you gently, what have you been thinking about today? Because that's what you've been living. The world around you is echoing back the tone you set in silence, and nothing will change until the thinking does. So if you want to heal your relationships, change your thinking about connection. If you want to find peace, change your thinking about the past. If you want to create abundance, change your thinking about worth. And if you want to love yourself, change your thinking about who you believe you are. It is never about adding more. It is always about subtracting the noise. You were born whole. You were born wise. You were born connected to the divine. And every thought that told you otherwise was an illusion borrowed from a world that forgot how to see. But today you remember, that is the beginning of everything. The moment you begin to observe your thinking without becoming it, something miraculous happens. A quiet space opens up between stimulus and response, between the noise of the world and the whisper of your soul. In that space lives your power not to react, but to choose, not to cling, but to release, not to fear, but to trust. And that single shift from automatic to aware begins to alter the very texture of your life. You stop being dragged by circumstance and start becoming guided by consciousness. You stop trying to control the uncontrollable and begin to align with what is eternal within you. There is no circumstance outside of you that holds more weight than the thoughts you are rehearsing inside you. You may not control what others do, what they say, or what has already happened, but you do control the meaning you assign to it. And meaning is everything. A thought of betrayal can become a teacher of boundaries. A thought of loss can become a doorway to gratitude. A thought of failure can become the seed of wisdom. It all depends on the thinker. We've been conditioned to believe that happiness is circumstantial, that peace is a destination, that worth must be proven. But none of that is true. It never was. The outer world is merely the shadow cast by the shape of your thoughts. And when you sculpt those thoughts with love, with intention, With a gentle but firm sense of presence, the world reflects a beauty that was waiting all along. No spiritual teacher, no enlightened soul ever reached peace by rearranging the furniture of the world. They reached it by rearranging the architecture of their inner world. They learned to master the mind, to see through its tricks, to soften the grip of judgment, and to return again and again to the spaciousness of now. They did not wait for perfect conditions. They created a perfect perception. And that is the invitation for you. The quality of your life is shaped by the quality of the questions you ask yourself. Not, why is this happening to me? But what is this showing me? Not, what do I lack? But, what is life trying to bring forward in me through this? The quality of your thinking is determined by your willingness to surrender the need to be right, to be certain, to be in control. Because real transformation does not come from control. It comes from trust. It comes from the surrender of false stories and the embrace of the sacred present. You were not born to ruminate in regret or spiral in worry. You were born to create. And your primary creation is the thought you allow to take root in your mind. That thought becomes emotion. That emotion becomes behavior. That behavior becomes character. And character becomes destiny. Trace it all back, and it begins with one silent seed, one thought. So plant well. Think of your thoughts as guests in the temple of your mind. Who are you letting in today? Who are you allowing to sit at the table of your awareness? Are they voices of fear or faith? Are they the voices of past wounds or present miracles? You are the gatekeeper. You are the master gardener. And whatever you nourish within will blossom in the world without. Do not underestimate this power. It is not a metaphor. It is spiritual law. Change the frequency of your thoughts, and you will alter the symphony of your life. This is not about positive thinking for the sake of ignoring pain. It is about conscious thinking that acknowledges pain but does not build a home inside it. It is about choosing the higher perspective even when the lower one screams louder. It is about rising not because the world demands it, but because your soul remembers its wings. And yes, there will be days when the old thoughts return, when the inner critic bangs on the door, when the fog sets in again. That's okay. This is not a path of perfection. It is a path of presence. And presence is a practice. Every moment you return to your breath, every moment you observe without judgment, every moment you choose a higher thought that is victory, that is healing, that is awakening. Your thoughts are not who you are. They are passing weather systems in the vast sky of your being. Let them come, let them go, but don't let them build cities without your consent. Don't let them shape your life from unconscious repetition. You are not here to be a mirror of past programming. You are here to be a lighthouse, steady, awake, and rooted in truth. Let go of the belief that change begins outside of you. Let go of the belief that one day, when circumstances are just right, then you'll feel peace. The truth is simpler and more liberating. When you choose peaceful thoughts, your life becomes peaceful. When you think thoughts of compassion, you walk in compassion. When you honor yourself in thought, the world begins to honor you. It's not magic, it's alignment. And alignment begins when the mind remembers its servant role, not its master role. When the ego is seen clearly not as an enemy, but as a confused guide doing its best to protect you through fear. But you, dear soul, do not need to be protected by fear. You need to be liberated by truth. And the truth is this: your thinking shapes your frequency. And your frequency writes the melody your life will play. Then listen deeply now. Not just with your ears, but with the whole of your being, with the space behind your chest where the silence lives, with the gentle fire of awareness that never flickers, no matter how chaotic the world becomes. That space knows your life is not dictated by chance, nor is it controlled by fate. It is directed by the silent compass of your attention, and your attention always flows in the direction of your thoughts. Where your focus goes, your energy grows. Where your energy grows, your reality unfolds. And the seed of it all is thought. So if your life feels noisy, heavy, cluttered with conflict and confusion, the answer is not to rearrange the people around you or chase more distractions. The answer is to cleanse the temple of your mind. Dust off the old assumptions, wash away the fear-stained beliefs, open the windows of perception, and let the light of awareness pour in. Ask yourself, is this thought bringing me closer to freedom or further into suffering? That one question, asked honestly and gently, can save a lifetime of unnecessary pain. You do not need to believe every thought you think. You are not obligated to obey the voices that echo with limitation, fear, or doubt. You are allowed to pause, to breathe, to question. You are allowed to say, I no longer choose to live under that belief. And in that moment, chains begin to fall. Not the kind you see with your eyes, but the kind that have been weighing down your spirit for years. And that release, that sweet, invisible liberation, that is the soul beginning to remember itself. Many people are walking through life asleep to the miracle of their mind, asleep to the truth that heaven and hell are not places we go, but frequencies we choose. A thought of bitterness is a step toward hell. A thought of compassion is a step toward heaven. And these steps, taken moment by moment, build the path your feet will follow. Do not wait for a burning bush. Do not wait for thunder in the sky or a voice to break through the clouds. The voice is already inside you. It speaks in the silence. It speaks when you slow down long enough to hear the deeper questions. What am I rehearsing in my mind each day? What am I practicing with my inner dialogue? And does it serve the life I truly want to live? Because here is the hidden truth. You are always practicing something. Every thought you entertain, every judgment you accept, every fear you repeat, you are strengthening a pathway in your mind. That pathway becomes the direction of your life. So ask yourself, is this a path of light? Is this a path of freedom? Or am I unconsciously paving roads to old prisons? You are not broken. You are not behind. You are simply ready to awaken. That is why these words resonate. Not because they are new, but because they are ancient truths you've always known. Deep down, beneath the noise, beneath the conditioning, beneath the expectations, your soul has always whispered, I am the thinker. I am the chooser. And I am free to choose again. Begin now. Begin today. Let this moment be the turning point, not the dramatic kind that needs lightning bolts or emotional fireworks, but the quiet kind where the soul simply stands up and says, no more thoughts that shrink me, no more stories that shame me, no more identities borrowed from pain. In their place, you begin to plant the seeds of clarity, of love, of worthiness. You begin to think as if life is on your side. You begin to believe that peace is not something to chase, but something to allow. You begin to live from the knowing that you are enough, not because you proved it, but because you remembered it. And that shift, subtle though it may be, is how miracles begin. Because when you change the way you think, you change the way you feel. When you change the way you feel, you change what you believe is possible. And when you change what you believe is possible, the universe rearranges itself to reflect that belief. Not because it was withholding, but because you were. You were withholding permission to receive because you didn't believe you were worthy. You were withholding love because you were afraid of being hurt. You were withholding peace because you thought chaos was your default setting. But now you begin to allow. And allowing begins with a thought. A single thought that whispers, what if the old story is not the truth? And once that thought enters, the whole house of illusion begins to shake. Because the mind that has built its home on fear cannot withstand the gentle wind of truth. That truth is simple. You are not your past. You are not your pain. You are not the voice that says you'll never make it. You are the awareness that hears that voice and chooses something higher. So today, choose again. Choose the thought that lifts you. Choose the thought that brings you back to stillness. Choose the thought that speaks to your future, not your fear. And when you forget, because you will simply remember that forgetting is part of remembering. Falling asleep is part of waking up. There is no shame in it, only grace. The quality of your life is not about what you have. It is not about what they think. It is about what you believe, what you nurture, what you entertain in the invisible world of your mind. And that is where your greatest work must begin, not in trying to force the external, but in softening, cleansing, and renewing the internal. Because when the internal world is healed, the external world becomes a mirror of that healing. And you become the light you were seeking. And when you become the light you were seeking, you stop chasing shadows. You stop grasping at empty promises wrapped in noise. You stop running from yourself because you finally realize there is nowhere to run. Everything you've ever wanted was already resting within the quiet space of your own being, waiting for your thoughts to align with its presence, not to earn it, but to see it. To see that your worth was never in question, only in recognition. That love was never absent, only obscured by the fog of conditioned belief. There is a profound shift that happens when you stop thinking in reaction and begin thinking in creation. When you stop allowing every passing fear to dictate your emotional climate and instead become the conscious author of your internal world. In that shift, you stop being a thermometer reacting to the temperature of the world, and you become the thermostat setting the tone of your life from the inside out. That is not philosophy, that is power. That is freedom, that is mastery. It doesn't happen by force, it happens by remembrance. And remembering is a sacred act. It's sitting in stillness long enough to hear the thoughts beneath the thoughts. It's breathing deeply enough to separate the truth from the trauma. It's choosing to become the observer instead of the reactor again and again until the old wiring begins to dissolve and a new way of being begins to rise. You cannot think your way to peace through judgment. You cannot think your way to love through resistance. But you can return always to a thought that is in harmony with who you truly are. A thought of grace, a thought of openness, a thought of I am already enough. And from that thought, a new vibration radiates outward, not in a shout, but in a silent frequency that draws new realities to your feet. Your job is not to fix the world. Your job is to think in alignment with truth and let the world respond to your alignment. That's how reality changes, not from resistance, but from resonance. If you don't like what life is reflecting, look not at the mirror, but at the face you're presenting to it. Change the internal pattern, and the reflection must follow. So many of us are addicted to fixing. We want to fix the job, the relationship, the circumstances. But rarely do we stop to examine the thinking that attracted those circumstances to begin with. And until that examination takes place, we find ourselves repeating the same storylines with different characters. Because the pattern was never out there, it was in here, in the thoughts we chose to believe, in the identities we wore like armor, in the narratives we never questioned. But now you see it. And with that seeing comes choice. And with choice comes healing. And with healing comes liberation. This is your turning point. Not because the stars have aligned, not because the world has suddenly become easier, but because you've decided to no longer abandon yourself with your thoughts. You've decided to no longer speak to yourself in ways you would never speak to another soul. You've decided to no longer give your power away to fleeting fears and old scripts. You've decided at last to come home to yourself. And home is not a place. It is a state of being. It is the vibration of love you allow yourself to rest in. It is the clarity that emerges when the mind softens. It is the deep, unwavering knowing that you are not here to be perfect, but to be whole. Not here to compete, but to contribute. Not here to survive, but to awaken. And awakening begins with thought. Not loud ones, not dramatic ones, but subtle, consistent thoughts of truth. Thoughts like, I am not my past. I am not this fear. I am not a victim of circumstance. I am a divine being, temporarily inhabiting form. I am allowed to think new thoughts. I am allowed to release the old. I am allowed to create a new reality, starting now, and then you do. Not all at once, but moment by moment, thought by thought, and those small shifts begin to gather, like droplets that become a stream, a current, a river, and finally a sea of transformation. You look around and the world seems to smile back, not because it has changed, but because you have. Your thinking has softened, your frequency has elevated, and the quality of your life has become the natural result. And as you continue on this path, not forward, but inward, you begin to realize that life has always been speaking to you in the language of reflection. Not punishment, not reward, but feedback. It shows you again and again the quality of your thoughts made visible. If your world is chaotic, perhaps your inner world has been cluttered. If your days feel heavy, perhaps your thoughts have been weighted by beliefs that no longer serve you. This is not to blame, this is to empower. Because if thought created it, thought can change it. You are not here to control every outcome. You are here to master your inner response to each outcome. That mastery is not stoicism, it is sacred receptivity. It is the art of choosing peace without the need for perfection. It is the quiet strength of being grounded in awareness, no matter what storms may come. And that grounding begins with one sacred habit: choosing higher thoughts. This is not about positive thinking as a mask. This is about truthful thinking as a mirror. Thinking that does not pretend life is perfect, but sees clearly that you are not the victim of it. That even when you do not control the wind, you can still set your sail, and your thoughts are the sail. So when the day begins, ask yourself, what direction will I sail today? Will you drift with the currents of fear? Will you replay the grievances of yesterday and call it truth? Will you grip tightly to your judgments and call it strength? Or will you release, not because you're giving up, but because you're waking up? Waking up to the truth that your mind is not a prison unless you let it become one. Your power lies in awareness. Awareness that watches thought without clinging to it. Awareness that sees a fearful thought and smiles gently, saying, I hear you, but I do not follow you. Awareness that witnesses an old wound rising and says, I understand. And I choose to bless it, not repeat it. This is the quiet revolution, the inner uprising that changes everything not by force but by vision, by returning to the truth that thought is creative, not reactive, that your experience of life is not happening to you, but through you, through the lens of your beliefs, through the patterns of your focus, through the tone of your self-talk. Speak to yourself kindly, not because it's trendy, but because your cells are listening, your nervous system is listening, your energy field is listening, and every thought you repeat becomes a vibration in your body, a signal to your reality, a prophecy unfolding in silence. So speak with reverence, even when you're tired, even when you're unsure, especially when you're afraid. That is when the power of your thinking becomes sacred. That is when you step not into illusion, but into alignment, into truth, into love. Not love as sentiment, but love as vibration, love as clarity, love as the refusal to think thoughts that betray your divinity. Let your thinking become a prayer, not with folded hands, but with an open mind. Let every thought be a candle lit in the dark room of unconsciousness. Let your inner dialogue reflect your divine inheritance, not your conditioned past. You are not here to rehearse wounds. You are here to remember wholeness. And when you forget, as we all do, return again. Return to the breath, return to the stillness, return to the observer within you who has never been harmed, never been afraid, never been less than divine. That witness within you is your anchor. And when your thinking returns to that awareness, the world begins to respond in kind. You may notice people treating you differently. You may find synchronicities arriving with more ease. You may watch as what once felt like effort begins to feel like flow. This is not coincidence. This is coherence. Coherence between who you are, how you think, and what you allow yourself to feel. And when that coherence is present, miracles are not rare, they are natural, because miracles are not events. They are perceptions. They are shifts in thinking from fear to love, from lack to trust, from separation to unity. And the more often you allow that shift in the quiet space of your mind, the more your entire life becomes a sanctuary of grace. You were never broken. You were only believing broken thoughts. You were never unworthy. You were only echoing unworthy beliefs. You were never disconnected. You were only distracted. And now you remember. You remember that every thought is a paintbrush, and your life is the canvas. Paint with intention. Paint with vision. Paint with love. Because the masterpiece of your life is not made with your hands, it's made with your mind. Then let us keep walking gently, steadily, down this sacred path of remembering. Because remembering who you are is not a grand announcement, not a mountaintop moment with trumpets and crowds. It is a soft return, a humble realignment with the center of your being. And that return begins with a single conscious thought. I no longer choose to think in opposition to my soul. You see, the soul doesn't argue. It doesn't scream. It doesn't compete for your attention. It simply waits quietly, faithfully, lovingly beneath the chatter of the mind. And when your thinking finally slows, when you stop rehearsing the noise long enough to be still, you feel it. That calm, sacred knowing, that presence that cannot be described, only experienced. That is who you are beneath the thoughts. But most people never meet that presence because they are too busy managing a mind that was never taught how to rest. A mind trained in survival, not serenity. A mind so addicted to solving problems that it forgets the greatest solution is often surrender. And here's the paradox. The more you try to control your thinking through force, the more chaotic it becomes. Because the ego loves a fight, but the soul whispers, there is nothing to fight. There is only something to release. So release it. Release the idea that your thoughts define you. Release the belief that your worth must be earned. Release the illusion that peace is conditional. And in that releasing, you begin to rise, not with effort, but with ease. Because the heavy thoughts fall away, and what remains is light. And what is light always remembers how to rise. The quality of your life, beloved, is not about the things you can accumulate, not about the titles you can achieve, not even about the milestones you cross. The quality of your life is about the quality of your presence. And presence is the gift you give yourself when your thoughts no longer drag you away from the now. In this moment here, now there is no problem. There is only breath. There is only being. And there is the choice right here to think a thought that brings you closer to peace. A thought that opens the window rather than slams the door. A thought that loves instead of judges. A thought that forgives instead of punishes. A thought that lifts instead of locks. And yes, You are allowed to choose those thoughts, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, because those are the moments that shape the landscape of your life. Anyone can think beautifully when things are easy, but to think lovingly in the face of fear, to think kindly when the world is cruel, to think abundantly when the bank account says otherwise, that is the true power of spiritual maturity. That is the fire of awakened thinking. That is the light that cannot be put out by circumstance. You are not your old reactions. You are not your unconscious habits. You are not your childhood programming. You are not your inner critic. You are not your inherited shame. You are not the wounds of your lineage. You are the sky that holds it all. You are the space between the thoughts. You are the stillness beneath the storm. And in that stillness, you are free. From this stillness, begin again. Begin thinking in the language of truth. I am here. I am whole. I am aligned. I am willing. I am enough. You don't need the world to agree with you to think in alignment with love. You don't need proof to think in alignment with abundance. You don't need apologies to think in alignment with forgiveness. The outer world does not need to shift first. You do. And once you do, the world, as if by divine reflection, follows. Not always instantly, not always in the ways you expect, but always faithfully, because your outer world is a delayed reflection of your inner devotion. So devote yourself to thoughts that heal, to thoughts that build, to thoughts that honor your sacredness. Devote yourself to thinking like someone who knows they are connected to Source, because you are. You always have been. No thought can sever that connection. But every thought can either obscure it or reveal it. Choose the thoughts that reveal. Choose the thoughts that set you free. Choose the thoughts that invite miracles. Because when the quality of your thinking rises, your whole life becomes a reflection of heaven lived on earth. And the door to that heaven is always unlocked. You simply need to think your way home. Then let us end, not with noise, but with a whisper, the kind that reaches deeper than any shout ever could. Your life is not waiting on the outside, it is blooming from the inside. You are not here to collect thoughts like trophies or chase perfection through the mind. You are here to think in alignment with the truth you already are. So pause, breathe, and remember, the quality of your life is the quality of the thoughts you nurture when no one else is listening. Choose thoughts that return you to peace. Choose thoughts that remember your wholeness. Choose thoughts that make room for grace. And when in doubt, choose love. Because the most powerful thought you will ever think is, I already am. And from that knowing, everything changes forever.